Rest in peace, Terry Venables. 1943 to 2023. And of course, there's lots that can be said about this manager, this player. Of course, most famous for his time at Chelsea. He was manager at QPR. He was manager at Tottenham and Leeds and Barcelona. And of course, England. And probably would be considered maybe joint second greatest England managers of all time. Obviously, Sir Al Frenzy would be number one, won the World Cup. And then sort of joint second, you would have Sir Bobby Robson, took England to the semi-final of the World Cup in 1990. And of course, Terry Venables took England to the Euro semi-finals in 96. And Bobby Robson and Venables were very similar types of managers in terms of their tactics. They were very sort of ahead of their time with regard to the English game. The English game was very set in a sort of 4-4-2, very rigid pattern of play. The majority of the English sides would play like that. Even Alex Ferguson, for example, the greatest manager of all time, in 96 was playing basically a 4-4-2 with Eric Cantona as a deep lying forward dropping in. But basically they were playing a 4-4-2. And obviously there'd be some interchanges in that, some adjustments into that. But for the most part, most English teams at the time played 4-4-2. And Sir Bobby Robson and Terry Venables, they kind of were the first real sort of English managers to kind of start moving away from 4-4-2 and start to incorporate some of the sort of European style of football into their play. And I wanted to talk about Terry Venables. I wanted to talk about his time as an English manager. I wanted to talk about specifically with regards to tactics and formations, the game against the Netherlands, the 4-1 victory against the Netherlands, which probably should have been 4-0 if it wasn't for that late Patrick Kluivert goal. But it really was a masterclass of kind of tactics and sort of free-flowing football and kind of giving players sort of the freedom to move into positions that were more beneficial rather than staying in sort of rigid formations, etc., etc. And just kind of like giving like a tactical, almost like sort of in the military in sort of World War I, World War II period. It started to become clear at that time that rigid sort of instructions weren't a good idea in the military from sort of your commanders. That it was actually better to allow sort of experienced soldiers on the field to make sort of in the moment decisions as to what would be the next step, what would be sort of the next move, the strategy of battle, etc., etc., based on what the opposition was doing. And Terry Venables and Sir Bobby Robson were among the first English managers to kind of offer that, and Terry Venables definitely had that as part of his sort of philosophy, particularly in this game in the Netherlands, which was, it was surprising because that was kind of the way that Holland played at the time. That was their thing. Their thing was the total football thing. Their thing was the sort of tactical and spatial fluidity, the sort of non-rigid roles, if you like. Particularly when you consider that a lot of the players in the Holland team in '96, they came from that Ajax team. You know, the Ajax team that was like Patrick Kluivert and Van der Sar, Clarence Seedorf, Edgar Davids, those players who they won the Champions League, I think in '95, with that sort of free-flowing, non-rigid style of play that most people would sort of attribute to modern day sort of Barcelona, Pep Guardiola, that '08 Barcelona team with Messi in that free role, and sort of Xavi and Iniesta, and Messi and David Villa and Pedro, just sort of all interchanging. Like, they could just appear anywhere on the pitch. And Terry Venables in this game against Holland kind of took that team to school. So let's take a look at that. So I want to show you sort of, before we get into sort of the sort of structural fluidity of this team, because when you watch this game, you can see these players sort of organizing themselves in many different formations. And I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I am going to take you through sort of the different shapes and just some of the pros and cons of each. And so when you see the players in that started this game, it's very easy to look at them and sort of go, okay, well, that's a 4-4-2. That's a 4-4-2. You know, there is sort of no players in there that you would think, well, that could be a 3 and a 5, or it could be a 4 and a 5. That doesn't really come across when you read the starting lineup. We have Seaman in goal, and then we have the defenders. We have Stuart Pearce, Tony Adams, Gareth Southgate, and Gary Neville. And then the midfielders we have in the centre, Gascoigne and Ince, and then sort of in the wide midfield positions we have Darren Anderton on the left hand side and Steve McManaman on the right hand side, and then we have the front two of Shearer and Sheringham. And I call those names out to you, and in your mind you're going to set them up in a 4-4-2. You're going to have sort of Stuart Pearce on the left hand side, Gary Neville on the right hand side. The two centre backs will be Adams and Southgate. You're going to put Gascoigne and Ince in the middle of the park, and then you're going to have Anderton on the left and McManaman on the right, and then Shearer and Sheringham up top. 4-4-2 standard. But the reality is that if you watch the game, you're not going to find them in that formation very often whatsoever. What I actually found them doing more often than not was playing a sort of a 3-5-2, I guess you would call it, with Southgate sitting just in front of a back three, with Pearce and Neville actually tucking in and playing as sided centre-backs, with Adams obviously controlling the middle, and Southgate sitting just in front of them as a defensive midfielder, sometimes even playing as a pivot, with Gascoigne and Ince just pushing slightly forwards, and Anderton and McManaman actually playing as sort of wingers, wing backs, if you like, not with too many defensive responsibilities, but generally covering the width of the pitch. And then Sheringham and Shearer up top as the two. But I also, and obviously the pros of this is that you can dominate the midfield, which is exactly what the Netherlands at the time were very well known for doing, and was very ahead of their time doing so. But Terry Venables, he decided that he had the players to go and do that himself, and did it very well. But not only did they set up in that sort of 3-1-4-2 or 3-5-2, if you like, but they also set up with a 3 across midfield, Anderton and McManaman coming further inside, and Southgate sitting in front of the back 3 again, and Gascoigne actually being pushed out of the midfield, being pushed further forward to play in that attacking midfield position. And again, this sort of diamond-ish formation would allow them to just dominate the ball in midfield and give Gascoigne the freedom to be the creative player that Gascoigne was obviously very capable of being. I also found them playing a sort of 3-1, 5-1 formation. Again, packing the midfield with the back three and Southgate just in front. Gascoigne and Ince pushed slightly further up the pitch, and obviously this is more of an offensive formation. And Sheringham dropping in and playing sort of as a deep line forward. Anderton and McManaman get pushed further out wide. And Shearer plays as the target man, the number 9. So lots of sort of positional fluidity in this game. And finally, they would play in a 4-3-1-2, in which Pearce, Adams, Southgate and Neville make up the back 4. Anderton, Ince and McManaman sort of play as a sort of spread out flat 3. Gascoigne pushes further up the pitch and plays in that attacking midfield role again. And Shearer and Sheringham play as the front 2. So Terry Venables was very, very confident in his players' technical abilities, obviously, to get on the ball, to control the ball, to dominate the ball and dominate possession, and to make good use of it through very good attacking players. And he obviously had a lot of faith in the back 4 that he had, and he obviously had a lot of faith in Gareth Southgate's technical ability on the ball to be able to play that defensive midfielder role, to be able to play as a pivot, to pick up the ball and play it off. And Tony Adams was another player who was probably very technically underrated, but clearly the Venables believed in players who, by their own mouth, would say that they didn't have a lot of technical ability. Somebody like Stuart Pearce didn't believe that he had a lot of technical ability, but Terry Venables quite clearly felt that Stuart Pearce was technically able enough to play in a team in which the goal was quite clearly to get more men in the midfield, to play the ball across the ground, and to beat Holland at their own game, that dominating midfield and playing that sort of free-flowing, fluid style of football. And to illustrate that just a little bit more, I'm going to show you, first of all, I want to show you sort of one of the good uses of that sort of formational fluidity that was offered by being able to switch from a back 4 to a back 3, for example, and being quite comfortable doing that as a team as well. In this situation, we can see obviously Pearce, Adams and Southgate have pushed up. Southgate is playing on the right of a 3, which is important, because having Southgate and having the belief that Southgate is good enough technically that he can play as a defensive midfielder and potentially as a pivot, it means that you also can unlock the potential of Gary Neville's crossing ability, which obviously we saw him and Beckham, the combinations that they had, and that would quite naturally cross over for Neville and McManaman. McManaman obviously offered something different than Beckham did. He had pace, he had the ability to go past the player, but he wasn't that sort of pinpoint accurate passer that Beckham was. He couldn't whip that cross in like Beckham could. And so having the potential of moving to a back 3 and allowing Neville to sort of play as a wing back, allowing him to push up the pitch, get the cross in, or just to offer the overlap to take the defender away from McManaman, who could step inside and definitely had the ability to score from outside of the box, to dribble past a few players, to get into the box, play a 1-2 off of a Shearer or a Gascoigne to create something. And that formational fluidity that Venables had ahead of his time as an English manager is what creates this scenario. I want to move over to Shearer's second goal. So this is quite an iconic goal in the tournament, actually. And what it shows here is, again, just that fluidity that's found in this team, allowing them to move into different positions where required. We have the back four of Pearce, Adams and Southgate. They've shifted over to the left-hand side. So what they're trying to do effectively is they're trying to create passing options here, trying to create triangles, trying to create squares all around the pitch, offering more options for outballs and passes. The yellow line is the ball, and obviously the arrows point to the movement of the player. So Anderton has the ball on the left-hand side here, and you can see that in front of him to his right he has Gascoigne available to him. More centrally he has Sheringham available. Behind Sheringham he has Ince available, just playing in front of that back four, just as sort of a shield. He can play a pass to Pearce. All of these options are available to him. Gascoigne, the more attacking midfielder, presents himself, gets the ball in from Anderton, gets the run into the box, heads for the byline. The defender comes across, he plays a little outside of the foot flick to Sheringham, who's just on the outside of the box, just on the left of the penalty spot, on the outside of the box. And Sheringham has a clear opportunity to shoot if he wants to. But Shearer has made a run from the right wing. Shearer was on the right wing. What's he doing on the right wing? And McManaman, you can see McManaman's position. It's tucked in. He's not the winger in this situation. McManaman is not the winger in this situation. He's more of a central midfielder here. But he's tucked in to cover the space that's been left by Gascoigne coming all the way out onto the left side, and Shearer pushing out to the right side where the space is. And Shearer makes this run into the box, sort of a curved run, and he hits it with a beautiful shot with the outside of his right foot, right into the top corner. Keeper has no chance. But that just illustrates that sort of fluidity that was available in this team because of a manager like Venables who saw that his players had the ability to do this. And finally, let's move over to the second Sheringham goal. So, looking at the position of these players, Gascoigne's not part of this picture. It was quite hard to track him in the video where he was. But Shearer's, again, he's playing as a winger here. He's on the left wing. What's he doing on the left wing? But this was the fluidity that was available to these players, licensed by the manager. And Shearer picks up the ball from a pass. I think Anderton plays the pass into him, but nonetheless, he picks up the ball on the left wing. He's got a defender on his back, and he plays a ball onto Anderton, who's coming in off of that left wing. So he's stepping inside. He's made this long run off the left-hand side to make himself available for the second ball off of Shearer. He comes inside with the ball and gets his shot away just outside of the box. And the keeper saves it, parries it badly. It's Van der Sar in goal. He parries it badly, straight onto the run of Sheringham, who's just lingering outside of that 18-yard box. makes the run onto the towards the 6 yard box, towards the penalty spot, and sticks it back where it came from. And we have McManaman on that right hand side making a run in for support. But what the hell is Shearer doing on the left wing? He's a striker. He should be in the middle of. He should be in the box. But Sheringham is operating in that role in this scenario. We don't know where Gascoigne is. I have no idea where he was. As far as I know, he was in his own half, because I couldn't find him in this picture at all. And Ince was just sort of travelling up the pitch, providing some support. But as we can see, when the goal goes into the back of the net, we have a front three or a front four of Shearer on the left side, Anderton playing centrally alongside Sheringham, and McManaman playing on the right side. So we've got 2 or 3 players who have just switched position just because it suits them, just because it provides an opportunity to create something. And that was I mean, this is a small part of the brilliance that was Terry Venables as a manager. But not only was he a genius, not only was he way ahead of his time with regard to sort of tactics and formations and sort of the fluidity of play and bringing that European style over to the English players and having belief in their technical abilities, but he was also a great man manager, and he managed some absolutely insane personalities like Paul Gascoigne. The guy is crazy. He's a great guy. Don't get me wrong. He's a great guy, but he's nuts. And to be able to manage a guy like that, to be able to not only get him on the pitch, but to get him to play to his strengths, to get him to be able to create for the team, to get him to make the team tick, and to be able to overlook some of the issues that Gaza clearly had at the time is a testament to old style managers. You don't see it anymore, where managers just understood that there were different personalities and some were going to be easier to deal with than others, but the ones that were difficult to deal with, oftentimes they were the ones who would give you the most, and I feel this is a sort of a bit personal to me, because in my sort of experience of employment, like, I'm not an easy guy to deal with, but I'm a talented salesperson. And if you were to give me that run, just give me that management style. And I've had it once in my whole life where I was managed by a guy who just understood that I was just a different cat. But if you let me just get on with things, you could get so much out of me. And not only that, but if you just left me to it, I would work so hard for you. I've had one manager like that across my whole life. And every other manager that I've had, there's always been a problem with me being a different guy. A different kind of guy. There was never, there was only the one manager who, with regard to Alex Ferguson and Eric Cantona, when Eric Cantona would turn up looking, less than presentable for away games, not living up to the standards that other players were expected of. And Alex Ferguson would say, "Oh, leave off of him, he's French." And that basically meant that, like, yeah, he's broken a minor rule, but he'll win us the game on Saturday. I've had one manager who understood that. And Terry Venables is that kind of manager. The kind of manager who says about Paul Gascoigne, he tore apart a plane, or he tore apart a hotel room, or whatever it was. Yeah, but we're playing Netherlands, and he's going to be the player that's going to make the difference. And that is something that is lost today. And unfortunately, we lost yet another man, a very good man, who understood that not all men are born the same, not all men are built the same. But if you let them just show themselves, the whole nation will get behind you. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And don't forget to comment down below. Let me know what you think about Terry Venables' career. What do you think about his effect on different characters in the game? And what do you think about his tactical brilliance, particularly with regard to that Holland game in '96? Let me know down below and have a great day.